No, not back to order. I call the meeting to order. We are meeting in public. Welcome to meeting number 113 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Citizenship and Immigration. Pursuant to Standing Order 108-2 and the motion adopted by the committee on February the 12th, May 1st, and June the 12th, 2024, the committee is resuming its study of the pension transferability and access to mandatory provident fund and delays in permanent residence and visas for Hong Kongers. I would like to remind participants of the following points. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. All comments should be addressed through the chair, whether participating in person or by Zoom. Please raise your hand if you wish to speak. The clerk and I will manage the speaking order as best as we can. Today's meeting is taking place in hybrid format. In accordance with the committee's routine motions concerning connection tests for witnesses, I am informing the committee that all witnesses have completed the required connection tests in advance of the meeting. Study of the transferability and access to mandatory provident fund and delays in permanent residence and visas for Hong Konger. So I have to get a couple of things done here before I welcome the guests. Administrator, there is a budget issue. Administrative matters before we begin. We have prepared a supplementary draft budget regarding the study of pension transferability and access to mandatory provident fund and delays in permanent residence and visas for Hong Kongers in the amount of $1,000 to cover the 2 extra meetings. Is there a motion to adopt this budget? Sure. Okay, Mr. Reddycop and Mr. Al-Khoury, all in favor? Opposed? None? Carried. Now, before I welcome the witnesses, I would love to welcome Mr. Chandra Arya, MP Arya, welcome to the committee. And I would, on behalf of the committee members, now I would like to welcome our witnesses for today's meeting. From Sun Life Financial Services of Canada, Ms. Laura Hewitt, Senior Vice President and Head Global Government Affairs and Public Policy, and she's with us by video conference. And from Manufacturers Life Insurance Company, Ms. Mary Scott Greenwood, Global Head Government Relations, is also with us by video conference. Up to 5 minutes will be given for the opening remarks, after which we will proceed with the rounds of questions. So now I'm going to welcome whoever is Laura or Mary Scott. Sure. Who want to go first? Laura, go ahead.
Happy to go. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so 5 minutes, please.
I am pleased to be back before the committee to answer any additional questions that members may have about Sun Life's role as an MPF trustee in the early MPF withdrawal application process. As a reminder, the Hong Kong Mandatory Provident Fund System is a retirement savings program intended to support those over the age of 65 with financial security in their later years. This system is similar to various mandatory retirement programs around the world. This means that money is released to the participants at retirement age, or, in rare circumstances, when someone meets the criteria for early unlocking. Those criteria are set by the relevant regulator and can include permanent departure or terminal illness. I want to begin by again reassuring the committee that Sun Life does not decline applications for early withdrawal of MPF funds from Canadian permanent residents or Canadian citizens who have permanently left Hong Kong. This is true regardless of what passport they used to enter Canada before receiving their permanent residency or Canadian citizenship status. As I will outline in my remarks, Sun Life has accepted 97.5% of all applications we received for early MPF withdrawal due to permanent departure between January 2021 and March 2024. I would like to clearly outline the data points that I provided both during my previous testimony and also in writing to the committee in June 2024. Between January 2021 and March 2024, Sun Life received a total of 14,590 applications from clients wishing to withdraw their MPF funds due to permanent departure from Hong Kong. Of these applications, a total of 14,238 were approved by both Sun Life and the Hong Kong regulator, the MPFA. The remaining 352 applications were declined either by Sun Life due to errors on applications or the applicant not meeting the criteria, or by the Hong Kong regulator due to the applicant having previously received a payout under the early departure process, making them ineligible to access funds through this stream again. Allow me to break this down further. Of the 352 declined applications, 180 were declined by Sun Life due to errors on forms or clients not meeting the withdrawal criteria. This type of review process is part of normal due diligence procedures in all markets in which we operate to ensure program integrity. The remaining 172 applications were approved by Sun Life but declined by the regulator. I would also like to stress that Sun Life must abide by the rules and regulations of every jurisdiction in which we operate. With regards to the criteria for early withdrawal due to permanent departure, those rules are set by the Hong Kong regulator, the MPFA. With respect to the steps required to obtain permanent residency in Canada and how long processing that permanent residency status takes, that is the purview of Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada. At Sun Life, our purpose is to help our clients achieve lifetime financial security and live healthier lives. In any jurisdiction where we operate, whether in Canada, in the United States, or in Hong Kong, Sun Life is focused on meeting the needs of our clients. Each market and each client has distinct needs, and we tailor our approach to best support them. We also ensure that we are compliant with the specific laws and regulations of each of those markets, which enables us to serve our clients to the best of our ability. These principles are true for Hong Kong and for early MPF withdrawal requests by clients who have permanently left Hong Kong. Maintaining the trust that our clients have in us in overseeing some of their most important financial savings is of vital importance to us. We continue to be committed to working with our clients during the application process, ensuring that any errors on applications are quickly addressed and providing guidance to them in reapplying when appropriate. We have resources available to all of our clients wishing to withdraw their MPF funds due to early departure, publicly available on our website, including a direct line to contact our dedicated Sun Life MPF experts. Thank you again for inviting me here today, and I look forward to answering your questions. Thank you.
Suit, perfect timing, 4 minutes, 22 seconds. And now we will go to, because it's been a while now, I'm getting used to this machine.
We can do it here, sir.
Just a minute. Okay, here we go. Sometimes they work.
I can do it here, sir.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So now we will go to Ms. Greenwood for 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Good morning. It is good to see you again, and an honor, as always, to appear before this parliamentary committee. I appreciate having another opportunity to discuss Manulife's pension business, and I'll be happy to try to answer any questions you may have. Manulife has been a proudly Canadian company since its founding 137 years ago. Today, we provide financial services to 35 million customers around the world, including 7 million Canadians. At Manulife, we are proud of our Canadian heritage. We also support and encourage Canada's ongoing presence in the Indo-Pacific, an important region with the largest population in the world, one where Manulife has had a presence for 125 years. The international success of Canada's financial services sector injects billions of dollars into the Canadian economy and powers tens of thousands of high-quality Canadian jobs. Financial services are among the country's most important exports, growing at an average of 7.4% a year over the last 5 years, according to the Conference Board of Canada. Manulife has been providing financial services in Hong Kong since 1898. We currently have more than 2.5 million customers and approximately 2,500 employees there. Almost all pension systems, including those in Canada and the United States, put restrictions in place to prevent individuals from accessing their pension savings before reaching retirement age. In Canada and elsewhere, these restrictions exist to ensure that the funds saved for retirement are available during retirement. The pension system in Hong Kong is known as the Mandatory Provident Fund, or MPF. Currently, there are 12 MPF trustees, including Manulife, who offer MPF plans to about 4.7 million members through approximately 360,000 participating employers. The pension laws in Hong Kong, enacted in 1995, allow for pensions to be withdrawn prior to the age of 65 only in specific circumstances, including early retirement, after the age of 60, permanent departure from Hong Kong, total incapacity, terminal illness, small balance, or death. These restrictions are very similar to the provincial laws that exist in Canada. In Canada, however, if someone wishes to make an early withdrawal from their pension on departure grounds, they must prove that they have been gone for at least 2 years, and there is a tax penalty imposed by Canada for doing so. This is not a requirement for those entering Canada from Hong Kong. Those who can provide proof of permanent residence in Canada can access their pension immediately, provided they meet the remaining eligibility criteria. It is also important to remember that when somebody is deemed ineligible for early withdrawal, their pension funds remain in place and available upon retirement. We have updated our available data since the last time we met with this committee. From January 2021 to the end of September 2024, Manulife received 5,720 requests from customers requesting that their pension funds be unlocked for reasons of permanent departure from Hong Kong to Canada. Manulife was able to process applications on the grounds of permanent departure for 4,533 applicants who moved to Canada. We were unable to process applications from 1,087 customers for a variety of reasons, including lack of sufficient documentation, forms that were filled out incorrectly, or information indicating that the applicant had already unlocked an MPF pension before. In offering life insurance and pension products, Manulife makes a long-term commitment to our customers for their financial security. We abide by our contracts in accordance with relevant laws. Our commitments span decades, and our responsibility to honor our obligations to our customers has been at the core of our business for 137 years. We are proud that 35 million customers around the world have chosen Manulife to help them save for retirement and to protect their families with life and health insurance. Thank you very much. I would be happy to try to answer your questions. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Ms. Greenwood. I don't know, either you and Ms. Hewitt, work together. 4 minutes, 21 seconds. Perfect timing. So, before I give witnesses the opportunity to answer, honorable members, just attention, please. If you feel, because I'm going to do this one more time, I know that you're familiar. So, if you think the witnesses are going too long with their answer, instead of just going back and forth, please raise your hand and I will stop the watch. So, okay, and also if you, before you start questioning, if you can mention who this question is going to, that will also be appreciated. So with that in mind, and the watch is clear, and we can start with Mr. McLean for 6 minutes. Please go ahead.
Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for the depth of information you have provided us here today and the meetings you've had with us to try and sort out. I know there's a lot of data that goes into this, and recognize, please, that we're trying to do our best to serve Hong Kongers that have come to Canada, some of whom are telling us directly that they cannot access their funds that are part of their pension funds that they put into the Mandatory Provident Fund. And the survey from many of them participated in indicated that sometimes 80% were having trouble because they were being blocked from getting that pension. So I really appreciate the significant data that you put on the table here about how much you actually process and the ones that are held up. As some of my colleagues would say, well, and I appreciate, Sun Life, thank you, Ms. Hewitt, for the detail you gave us as well. But even the 4 that are left behind kind of thing are still 4 that we'd like sorted out at the end of the day. In that respect, Ms. Greenwood, can you tell us, you've got in your letter 861 were not processed due to ineligibility or insufficient documentation, which is significantly higher than the numbers provided us by your competitor, Sun Life. Can you tell us about the ineligibility that we're talking about there? Is that as a result of the BNO passport, or is it, something that you're going to be able to overcome for 861 applicants here?
Ms. Greenwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the question. Well, I'll try to give you some detailed numbers and see if this helps answer the question that was asked. So from from 2021 through the end of September 2024, we received 5,720 requests for early withdrawal, as I mentioned, and we were able to process 4,533. So let me break that down for you. Approximately 80% of the early withdrawal applications were processed. 5% of the applicants did not provide sufficient evidence of the right to permanently reside in Canada. That's 291 people. But overall, of the ones that were not able to process, 942 provided incomplete claim documents. 214 applied with a study visa. 77 tried to use the BNO designation to establish Canadian residency, and the government of Canada, as you know, doesn't automatically give residency based on the BNO designation. 30 applicants had missing or unmatched signatures, and 136 were not processed for other reasons, including previous early withdrawal, which kicks you out of the system, if you will.
Thank you.
Honourable member.
Thank you very much for that detail. And if you could provide that in writing to us, please, that detail about why those were rejected. We'd really appreciate that for the committee's report here, Ms. Greenwood. I'm going to turn over the rest of my time to my colleague, Mr. Kamick. Thank you very much.
So I don't have a specific person to ask this to, so either one of you jump in. There is, by my count, and other groups have said, there's 60,000 Hong Kongers who've come to Canada under our different pathway schemes right now. About 10,000 of them have been approved for permanent residency, which leaves about 50,000 in between who are going to be seeking to reside in Canada on a more permanent basis. Just adding up your numbers, this still leaves tens of thousands of people who could be applying to your companies and other companies who are also MPF providers to get their funds out. So I'm going to ask you, 2 IRCC officials came to this committee and blamed other departments for some of the problems associated with figuring out how to get the BNO passport entry off of the PR cards. One IRCC official told us it was Transport Canada. Another one told us it was ICAO. And now both those organizations have responded to us. ICAO said that is up to the countries. It is nothing to do with them. Canada is a sovereign state, and they can decide how it assigns the codes, and it's entirely up to them. That's in an email from the Legal Affairs and External Relations Bureau. And then Transport Canada said it's entirely within IRCC's remit. They decide what appears on the PR card in the residency cards and codes under IRCC's internal guidelines. Do you have any concerns as companies that there seems to be either chaos or confusion in these government departments about who is responsible for what?
Madam Greenwood or Madam Hewitt?
I'm happy to try to answer.
Sure, please go ahead. Go ahead, Ms. Greenwood.
Thank you. So if it helps, if this gives clarity, the BNO designation or GBN or any of that is not a reason that we would decline to have an early unlock to someone's pension. So the reason we unlock a pension is if they can establish permanent residency. And so if there's a Canadian PR card that has a BNO, that wouldn't be a reason that we declined.
Sorry, Ms.
I'm
Greenwood.
not sure if that's helpful.
Well, it's not actually, because in the case of Manulife, all of your companies, of course, will say yes, and you can pass it on to the Hong Kong administration, and they can say no based on what appears in the application. But aren't you in any way worried that two government departments and one international organization, that there's confusion within the departments on what should appear on the PR card, which is the underlying issue of how the Hong Kong administration can pick and choose, if it wants to, deny a Hong Konger in Canada who they recognize as having come in on a BNO passport? Do you have any concerns about this confusion?
The time is up. Madam Greenwood, please brief answer.
So my understanding is that the only up or down vote, if you will, that the Hong Kong Authority has on whether to approve an early unlock is whether or not the applicant has applied previously, because you can only unlock it once in your life. Other than that, the criteria for establishing whether or not you can unlock it has to do with establishing permanent residency, and the BNO card in and of itself doesn't establish permanent residency in Canada as of today.
Thank you. 6 minutes, 41 seconds. So we will go to the next round. Next person, sorry, it will be MP Kaibaga for 6 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to thank our witnesses for being here today. I do apologize that I'm speaking a little low today. My headphones are not very comfortable right now, so I'll do my best to get through this. I'm going to start with my first question. You talked about the data on the approval and rejection rates for application for Hong Kongers that are holding the BNO passports. Could you give us a number of how many have Canadian PR or citizenship?
Ms. Greenwood.
Yes, Mr. Green, I apologize.
Thank you. So I need to check the numbers. We were able to process 4,533 applicants of the 5,720 that applied. So we were able to process that number. So they would have met the criteria. And that's from the period of 2021 through last month.
How does this data align with the claim of the 97.5% of applications that are approved?
I think that's a Sun Life number. Our number is about 80%. And it's not a disapproval, it's whether or not we can process. So I want to let the committee know that if we're not able to process their claim because, let's say, they didn't have a particular document, they can reapply and then we can process the claim.
Can Sun Life, do you mind sharing as well as how many approval and rejection rates for applications were Canadian PR or citizens, and how that data aligns with the 97.5%?
Ms. Hewitt.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for the question. So the 97.5% is our total applications processed in the timeline I shared. So since the start of 2021, so we received 14,590. We approved 14,238. So that's the 97.5% that I referred to in my remarks. In terms of Canadian citizens and Canadian permanent residents, we've declined a total of 2. And so you'll see in the chart that we shared with the committee, there's 6 listed. 4 of those we assisted in reapplying. They were subsequently approved. So at the end of the day, there are 2 Canadian citizens and Canadian permanent residents who have been declined, who have not yet reapplied and received their early withdrawal.
Honourable
And
member.
that was over what time frame?
That was from January 2021 until the end of March 2024.
And what was how was the figure determined?
That's based on our real application data. So the team pulled the applications and reviewed them.
And regarding your internal policy on applications from the individuals who have the BNO passports, is there a difference in the ways that you process these applications?
So let me just split it into two groups. So if someone has Canadian permanent residency or Canadian citizenship, regardless if they entered the country on a BNO passport or anything related to the BNO, they meet the criteria, and we are approving those applications, and that's reflected in our numbers. If they are applying solely based on the BNO, they haven't yet obtained Canadian permanent residency. That means they haven't yet met the criteria for early withdrawal. And so we're unable to process those applications at this time. But as soon as they receive their Canadian permanent residency, they're, of course, welcome to reapply, and we'll process the applications then.
Honorable member.
Mrs. Greenwood, is this the similar process that you have in your internal policy?
Yes, it is. The process is set forth pretty specifically, and I can walk through it if you wish. The customers which apply for an early withdrawal submit a form, and they make a statutory declaration that they have departed or will depart from Hong Kong to reside elsewhere with no intention of returning to Hong Kong for employment or resettlement. The form is prescribed by the regulator. It includes fields like personal information, contact information, reason for departure. They're also required to provide documentary proof that they are permitted to permanently reside in a place outside of Hong Kong, which could be a foreign passport, evidence of foreign citizenship, or permanent residency. And I can continue to go through the process if you wish, but the short answer to your question is it's basically the same process. It's prescribed in regulation that all of the MPF trustees follow, including ourselves and Sun Life.
Honorable
In
member.
a case where, thank you, Chair, I apologize. In a case where individuals are denied, despite holding whether PR or citizenship, are they provided clear explanation documentation why their application was unsuccessful?
Greenwood.
Greenwood, please.
Yes. The answer to that is yes. So they would receive a letter, or they could talk to a customer service person who would say, you apply, for example, in the case of 214 people coming to Canada, you applied with a study visa, and unfortunately a study visa isn't sufficient proof of permanent residency. So they would be given that counseling, and they would be able to reapply if they have additional documentation that meets the criteria. Yes.
Mrs. Hewitt, is this a similar process for you guys? Do you guys provide clear explanation to the clients, whether they hold the PR citizenship, when they are not successful, explaining why they were not successful?
Brief answer,
absolutely.
please,
So-
Ms. Hewitt.
Thank you. So we send them a letter as well, which outlines the reason that they have not been approved, and it proactively gives them the contact information for our pension services hotline. And as I said in my comments earlier, there's that example of the 4 Canadian permanent residents who didn't complete their forms correctly, were able to get in contact with us, filled out the forms again, and then subsequently reapplied and were approved. So we have people on standby to help out clients work through the process.
Thank you. 6 minutes, 21 seconds. And now we will go to Mr. Bruno Decep. Please go ahead for 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Chair. Welcome back to the committee, Ms. Greenwood and Ms. Hewitt. We are delighted to have you here with us today. Insurance companies, your insurance companies, do you deal with mandatory provident funds when the request or application for permanent residency is submitted as proof? Do you process such request?
Madame Greenwood.
Ms. Greenwood? As you will.
If I understand the question, if someone has permanent residency in Canada, would we process the application? The answer is yes, assuming that the other criteria that I mentioned also they also have. So the signatures match and that sort of thing. But the answer is yes.
To be clear, simple acknowledgement of receipt by our IRCC saying that they are processing the person's application for permanent residency, is that sufficient proof for permanent residency?
Pardon me, I didn't understand. No, they
Oh,
have
okay.
to have a permanent residency.
I'll stop the
card. It
watch and
can't be an
repeat.
application.
You want to repeat? I'll stop the watch. Okay, please
Ok.
go ahead.
Vous me redonnerez du temps parce que peut-être.
Maybe there was some confusion. Are you giving me back my time? There was a problem with understanding. What I'm asking, if a client wants to request their pension fund and as proof that they are not returning to Hong Kong, if they send you acknowledgement of receipt from IRCC saying that they are processing their request for permanent residency, they have not yet obtained their permanent residency, but IRCC says that they are processing the request, is this sufficient evidence that would allow you release the funds?
Ms. Greenwood.
Thank you. I understand. I now understand. I apologize. I don't think that it's sufficient to acknowledge receipt of an application. I think you actually have to have the permanent residency designation. I would be happy to double check that, but my understanding is that that you have to actually have the document, the residency document.
Et à ce moment-là, est-ce que.
In that case, what I understand is that applications are automatically denied if that is the evidence submitted by the client. But normally, your company understands that the client is in the process of obtaining permanent residency. In that case, does the company provide support to the person while their request for PR status is being processed by our IRCC? If that is not the case, don't you think it's possible for you to change your approach and to offer some kind of support to the clients while they are waiting for their request to be processed by IRCC?
Ms. Greenwood.
Thank you so much. If by support you mean information about the process, the answer is yes. If what you mean is unlocking their pension early when they haven't yet met the criteria, unfortunately, that is not something we're able to do according to the laws and statutes that we have to abide by.
Merci pour cette.
Thank you for your answer, very honest answer. Normally, anyone who leaves Hong Kong once and for all has the right to withdraw their funds from the MPF. But a unilateral declaration from Hong Kong when the BNO visa was opened in January 2021 said they will no longer recognize the BNO certification, and this has blocked hundreds of Hong Kongers and companies based in North America and Europe accepting to apply directives from the Hong Kong government. So once again, I'm asking you this question. In your opinion, is this not an obvious example of transnational repression organized by a government using companies which do not have headquarters in that country?
Ms. Greenwood.
Thank you so much. So the way I would answer that is to say that we have been able to process the vast majority of the applications. And one statistic that I haven't provided you yet, but I'll provide you now, is that from 2020 to 2024, the early withdrawals that we were able to process and release globally was and account for some exchange rate differences, but 1.639 billion Canadian. So the vast majority of applicants have received their funds early. But I would also hasten to add that the people who haven't been able to receive their funds, either because they haven't applied or because their application didn't have the documentation, their funds are protected for them. We are trustees of their funds.
Je suis désolé de vous interrompre.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I don't have a lot of time. My question is simple. Do you realize that your company involuntarily is being used for transnational repression purposes because the government in Hong Kong has decided not to recognize BNO? Maybe it's not your fault, but unfortunately, Ms. Greenwood, Ms. Hewitt, we are obliged to recognize today that the decision by Hong Kong not to recognize BNO is forcing you as a company to avoid helping these people who normally would not be returning to Hong Kong, as we know for sure, but they can't have access to their funds because they are obliged to respect Hong Kong regulations. What we are understanding is that your company is involuntarily participating, but participating in any case, participating in transnational repression. Am I mistaken?
Miss Greenwood or Miss Hewitt, one of you.
I'm happy to start. Ms. Hewitt can join in. We are seeking to do what is best for our customers around the world, and we will always do that. The Indo-Pacific region has over 4 billion people and accounts for $47 trillion in economic activity. Canadian companies, including ours, have been operating in this region for over
Je suis
100
vraiment désolé, je veux pas être...
I am really sorry. I don't want to be impolite, Mr. Chair, with the witness. She can answer with yes or no.
Bruno Sepp, please, if you can follow my guidelines, I would not take your time away, but this creates more problems, in fact, for the interpreters and whatnot, even for me. So I have stopped the watch, and now I will give you the time, so please go ahead.
La question, elle est très simple.
The question is simple, and I'm not blaming you. You have the right to also denounce whatever on your part. What is happening is that you are being used through a legislation from an authoritarian regime and government. You are being used to crack down opponents of the government in Hong Kong who have left and are now in Canada or the UK. I'm not blaming you. It's not your fault. That is clear. But I'm telling you that you need to look into the situation and be aware of the fact that you are being used by a government to engage in transnational repression because Hong Kong no longer recognizes the BNO. That's what I'm telling you simply. I'm not blaming you, but I'm asking you to simply recognize that fact. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
6 minutes, 24 seconds. So we will now, just a minute, clear this and go to MP Kwan for 6 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the two witnesses for coming back to the committee. Ms. Greenwood, you mentioned that one of the requirements for eligibility is that the applicant would have to fill out a declaration, and that in that declaration, they would have to indicate that they have no intention of returning to Hong Kong or that they have every intention of leaving Hong Kong permanently. Can you advise whether or not who sets the requirement that that declaration in and of itself is insufficient to be utilized as proof that they do not intend to return to Hong Kong, or that is to say they intend to leave Hong Kong permanently?
Ms. Greenwood.
Thank you so much. So the criteria in every jurisdiction in the world are set forth by the local jurisdiction. And so the criteria that's required in Hong Kong is not only the declaration that you intend to leave and not return, but also the proof that you have permission, if you will, to reside in another jurisdiction. It's two criteria that you have to meet.
You say that that's the Hong Kong government that requires proof of permanent residency or citizenship in a different country in conjunction with the declaration for you to then process the application. Is that correct?
Ms. Greenwood.
Thank you. It is the regulator of the Mandatory Provident Fund, which is in Hong Kong.
Regulator in Hong Kong, who sets the rules for the regulator? Is it the Hong Kong government?
Ms. Greenwood.
Yes.
Okay. And that's the same for Sun Life. Is that correct?
Madam Hewitt.
Yes, so we follow the rules from the Mandatory Provident Fund Authority, the MPFA. That's the
All right.
regulator.
Thank you. So hence we have this problem. You have the Canadian government who created this lifeboat scheme for Hong Kongers who are fleeing persecution in Hong Kong as a result of the national security law. The government, in their wisdom or lack thereof, created this lifeboat scheme only provides for temporary residence by way of a work permit or a study permit. Then they have to go on the queue to make an application for permanent residence, which we now know that there is a huge backlog and delay in processing. It has, in the beginning, there was swift action, but as time passes, it's been lengthened by way of the delay to the point where the minister even made an announcement to further extend people's work permit, study permit for another 3 years. So that is to say, a person could be here for 6 years, as long as 6 years under this current scheme, without getting permanent residence, because the minister anticipates that people would not be able to swiftly get their permanent residence status. That is the reality, and then as a result of that, people are not able to provide proof of permanent residence because the application is in process. And to make it even worse, the government, the minister just made an announcement with the levels plan of cutting levels plans to the tune of 105,000 permanent resident status applications. So you can imagine how long is the wait list for Hong Kongers as they continue to wait. Now, these Hong Kongers have zero intention of returning to Hong Kong because they know if they did, they would be persecuted. People know that. I think the Canadian government knows that. And so my question then to you, as the manager of their pension, because of this rule, they're unable to access their funds, will your organization be willing to write to the regulator to ask for consideration for applicants who are in a prolonged period of waiting for permanent resident status with their declaration that indicates that they do not intend to return to Hong Kong, be accepted as proof that they intend to leave Hong Kong permanently so that they can access their pension? Is that something that your organization would consider doing?
Ms. Greenwood or Ms. Hewitt? Go ahead. Ms. Greenwood?
So I understand, I think I understand the question. The basic premise of your question has to do with the period of time it takes for the Government of Canada to determine and provide permanent residency or citizenship. And it seems to me that that is a function of the Government of Canada as opposed to a regulated entity. That's how I would answer that.
Madam Hewitt, you want to contribute?
Yeah, I would say it's not within our authority to change the criteria, but once that permanent residency does come through, as our numbers show, we're able to process that application and approve Canadian permanent residence.
Yeah, I understand that it's not within your authority. However, given that you just said yourself, the both of you, that you are client-centered, that you're there to support the clients, knowingly that this is the reason why people can't access their funds, even though they have every intention, as declared in their declaration, that they want to leave Hong Kong permanently, then wouldn't it be incumbent on your organization, as someone who is client-centered, to express that point of view, to ask the regulator to consider allowing for these individuals access their funds? Now, on the flip side, would you be willing as an organization write to the Canadian government to indicate that these are the number of applicants in your system who's applied and unable to access their pension funds because they have not been able to prove permanent residency because they only have a study or work permit? Is that something that you'd be willing to do? Just a quick yes or no.
6:40. So yes or no answer, please. Ms. Greenwood?
We provide clear answers about what the constraints are and what the opportunities are. Our focus is our customers. You're right about that. And we're highly regulated. And so we operate under the regulations that are provided to us.
Ms. Hewitt?
Yeah, so we must comply with the rules and regulations, but we are actively helping our clients. And I think, we continue to proactively give them information and be there to support them, ensuring that they have access, whether that's when they hit retirement age at 65, which is, again, it's a retirement scheme, so it's there for them in their later years,
I just
or in
wanted
the
a yes or
cases
no.
where they're early unlocking.
Thank you. MP Kwan, 7 minutes and 32 seconds. So we will now go to Mr. Kmitch for 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So I just wonder, why are you making them sign a statutory declaration that says they're staying permanently in Canada with no intentions of returning? If you've said that an application for PR is not good enough, is that your requirement or is that a requirement of the MPFA?
Who has your question?
Ms. Hewitt.
Ms. Hewitt, please go ahead.
So that is one of the 3 criteria set by the MPFA. The statutory declaration is part 1. Part 2 is the proof of permanent ability to reside outside of Hong Kong. And then part 3 is that they haven't used the permanent departure stream before. Those are the 3 criteria set by the regulator.
So, the Chair, I would submit to the 2 witnesses that that's the perfect example, and some of the numbers that Ms. Kwan just reported back, like the government is going to cut by more than half the agency applications it obtains. I've said at the beginning there were tens of thousands of Hong Kongers on one of the 2 pathways in Canada. So they're looking at like 6, 7, maybe 8 years at current levels to be processed, which means that none of them would be able to access their MPF funds. And there is no knowing whether new MPFA rules would be introduced. Do you have any concerns then for your clients in Canada, that being the case?
Ms. Hewitt. Or Greenwood?
So, as we discussed a little bit earlier, there are 291 Manulife customers in Canada that are we weren't able to provide the evidence of permanent departure, and so we work with them. And as their evidence is available, they can reapply, and we can process it. And by the way, we process it. We're required to, and we do process it within 30 days. So, once you meet the requirement, it's fast, and otherwise your money is protected until you reach the age of 65 or retire. That's what it's all about.
Honorable.
So, Chair, I just want to thank the witnesses for those answers. I'm not satisfied, but it does provide more clarity about where some of the problems are coming from. I do have a motion I wanted to move, which is related to the international student study that this committee is going to be undertaking. So my motion has been on notice since September 13th, that pursuant to Standing Order 1081A, the committee requests the Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship to provide an unredacted version of the memorandum to the Minister updating the policy regarding the financial requirement for study permit eligibility for international students, submitted in response to the February 28, 2024 motion for production of papers, and that any redactions applied under Section 14 and 21 of the Access to Information Act be removed, while respecting exclusions under Section 19, 23, 69, as the current redactions hinder the committee's ability to discharge its duty of proper oversight and scrutiny. And just for the public to understand, committees of Parliament have an unlimited right of access to documentation. I've gone through the briefing note. So the 3 areas I am okay being redacted are Section 19 for personal information. I counted 0 in the briefing note. Section 23, solicitor-client privileges, which means the lawyers of the Government of Canada. There are 3 of them. I'm okay with that being not shown to us. In Section 69, there's 1 reference in the briefing note. The other ones, though, are much more substantive. Section 14, federal provincial affairs, 11 redactions. And Section 21, operations of government, there were 40 redactions. And I think we on the opposition side especially have a right to know what was going on. This is an expansive briefing note. We're going to be doing an international student study, and we have a right to know what is behind here, unless they have something to hide, which I hope they don't, and we'll see how the vote comes out. But that's why I've moved this motion. I want the document unredacted, Chair.
Okay. So the motion is on the floor. Debate. MP Kwan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I fully support the motion. The production documents was something that I believe I advanced in a previous study or previous meeting, if you will. And I was astounded when the documents came back with so many blank pages. And so, Mr. Chair, I would fully support the motion that's been put on the floor.
Okay. Any other discussion? Suspend for a minute?
So we can have a discussion.
Okay. Suspended.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I take it both our witnesses have already left. Okay, I cannot thank them. So did you thank them?
I already thanked them, so you don't need to worry about that. Let's focus on the motion brought forward by Mr. Comich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank Mr. Comich for bringing this motion forward. I just wanted to emphasize about redaction and why information that are redacted in certain criteria for redaction. My background in policing, there's always freedom of information in any public office where government office, there's freedom of information request, and most of the information or all of the information that we disclose to the public are redacted. Every report that goes out are redacted, and there's a reason for that. The reason for redaction is, protecting the privacy and protecting some sensitive information that is on the report itself, so that it doesn't get out into the public where it jeopardizes people's safety or jeopardizes other things. And this is in the policing realm, right? I mean, it would be different here in a federal government issue matter, but in policing, redact information so that it is not jeopardizing people's safety and sensitivity of the investigation itself. On saying that, I'm hoping that the information that Mr. Comich is asking for is used, in a proper manner instead of just using it for a frivolous matter. I'm hoping for that. And on that, Mr. Chair, thank you.
MP Kwan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd like to actually amend the motion by stipulating that we need to get this information within 30 days. I think that's fairly standard, and 30 days is ample time for the department to produce the documents. Otherwise, I fear that we might never see it at the rate in which things are going.
Amendment on the floor is department to provide. Sorry, I'll give you the time if I can say, and I'll come back to you. So now we have the amendment on the floor by Ms. Kwan that the information be provided by the department within 30 days. And I was speaking on the amendment, Mr. Radikov.
Yeah, just real quick. Wonder if it should say calendar days, just so that we are ultimately super clear on this. So
30 calendar days.
30 calendar days.
Okay, thank you. So, yeah. Mr. McLean is okay. I like your tie.
Thank you.
So, within 30 calendar days, okay? So, any more discussion on the amendment brought forward by MP Kwan? No discussion? All in favor? No favor? Okay, should I take the recorder board or defeated? Recorder board? Recorder board? Recorder board, please. Mr. Clerk, please go ahead.
So the vote is on the amendment proposed by Ms. Kwan. Mr. Ali. No. Mr. Chang.
No.
Monsieur El Khoury. No. Madame Kayabaga.
Contre.
Ms. Zaid.
Against.
Mr. Comich. For. Mr. McGuire.
For.
Mr. McLean.
For.
Mr. Riddicup.
For.
Monsieur Brunel-Duceppe. Oui. Ms. Kwan.
For.
Yeas 6, nays 5.
Carried. Now we are on the motion as amended. Any discussions? No discussion? All in favor? Against? Carried? Recorder board? Carried on division? Carried on division. Thank you, and the meeting adjourned.